And I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Welcome to Stranger Waves, a factual-based recounting of the unexplained and obscure mysteries of the world. On this special Halloween edition of Stranger Waves, we travel to the far north of Canada, where the Inuit people have told stories of the undead walking the frozen, isolated lands of Nunavut. Zombies have been a part of Hollywood lore for decades. Some Halloween stories are creative figments of the imagination from writers such as Edgar Allan Poe, Mary Shelley, or Stephen King. Others find their inspiration in history, like Vlad the Impaler, or Amityville. And then there are zombies. Sometime before 1850, in a small hunting camp 1,500 kilometers northwest of Iqaluit, Nunavut, these mindless creatures materialized out of the dark, slowly walking towards the camp. All of the men had left on a hunting trip, leaving behind the women, children, and one old man. They were all huddled together in their igloo as they heard the crunching footsteps get closer.
Everyone got scared. Very, very scared.
One of the women later said. The footsteps then stopped outside the igloo. There was not a sound. The old man bravely stepped outside, and what he saw was something incomprehensible. "I've never seen in all my life a devil or a spirit. These things are not human," were the old man's thoughts passed down through Inuit oral history. "They were beings, but not Inuit." A few thin, pale, human-shaped creatures stood outside the igloo, unaware of their surroundings. One of the creatures curiously touched the outside of the igloo, as if unsure what it was. The old man then touched the man's face, and it was cold, but not fish cold, and concluded that they were probably still alive. These strangers were too weak to cause any harm, so the women came out to help by trying to warm them by a fire or feed them food. However, these strangers were timid and refused to eat anything despite dealing with extreme starvation. When the men returned from the hunt, they constructed another igloo for these strangers to sleep. They gave them 3 seals for food and a fire to cook. While the strangers slept, the hunting group decided hastily to abandon their camp and travel home, in fear that the strangers may kill them in their sleep. This wasn't the only encounter the Inuit people had with pale men walking across the Arctic. There are stories of other hunting parties coming across men dying of scurvy or botulism, and raving madly in a language they didn't understand. The true horror of the situation unfolding in the Arctic did not present itself until a few months later, when some of the men from the original hunting camp returned to retrieve some belongings they had left behind. The pale strangers were all dead inside the igloo. They had begun to eat each other, leaving the 3 seals untouched. Where did these zombie-like men come from? Inuit history has one clue. There was a story of 2 large ships found frozen in the ice, bringing death into the Arctic. However, these were only stories at the time. In 1854, word of these stories got back to Britain. They concluded that the stories could be the evidence of the infamous Franklin expedition that had vanished nearly a decade before. The Franklin expedition had been made up of 2 ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, whose mission was to explore the last unnavigated section of the Northwest Passage in the Arctic. Britain sent a search party only to find human bones eaten clean. However, with no sign of the ships, it was unclear that these remains belonged to the sailors of the Franklin expedition. But popular opinion was that the ships were somewhere in the Arctic. Since then, many searches attempted to find the location of the two missing ships. It wasn't until 2014 that HMS Erebus was found at the bottom of Wilmot in Crampton Bay, roughly 1,500 kilometers northwest of Iqaluit, where the hunting camp first encountered their pale strangers. Not much remained of HMS Erebus. In 2016, the other ship, HMS Terror, was found at the bottom of Terror Bay, just north of the wreck of HMS Erebus. Today, both locations are National Historic Sites that are protected and co-managed by Parks Canada and the Inuit. Current investigations are ongoing to uncover what exactly happened to the crew and the ships. However, based on the Inuit stories, we can draw our own terrifying conclusions. As we ride down this wave, we ask ourselves, was it bad luck to have HMS Erebus named after a region in hell, and another ship called HMS Terror? Were they foreshadowing their own demise? Also, how far would each one of us go for survival to get home? Let's pray we never run into that situation on this Halloween. On the next Stranger Waves, we will take a small break until the new year with 4 more stories of the paranormal. Until next time, stay warm, stay safe, and have a happy new year.